before I get into this information about the Japanese black pine, let's talk about what you'll need. You will need a Japanese black pine, okay? Not a red pine, not a mugo, not a pinyon. Each one of those trees out there, each one of the pines except for the black pine, the red pine, and the Monterey pine are taken care of different. And the black pine, the red pine are 2 needle, Monterey pine in our area is 3 needle, but you still take care of them the same way. Okay, so the next tool that you're going to need besides a tree, can you see that? Those are called straight tweezers. Okay, I got these a long time ago. They'd already been sharpened, which is key when you're pulling needles, which is what we're going to talk about next. The great thing about YouTube is if you don't have a Japanese black pine, you can always come back when you get one and then re-watch this video and follow along with the steps that I'm about ready to show you. There are 3 to 4 times a year that we work on a black pine. The first one that we would do is repot. And depending on where you are in the United States, you can repot, about a month apart. So we start in March sometimes. So that's the first thing we do. And then the next thing we would do, depending on the stage of development, boy, is that key. That's going to have to be another video, is stage of development. The next thing that we do is break the candles on the strongest areas, okay? Now, if you haven't built a branch, don't break a candle. And just because you know how to do something doesn't mean you should do it. I taught a student how to decandle one time, and they went and decandled every single one of their trees, even though it wasn't that stage of development, put the tree back 2 years. So make sure you know the stage of development that your tree's in before you do that process, okay? So the next process would be decandle. And then the next process after that is pulling needles, okay? In other words, weakening the strong and strengthening the weak. And that's usually done November, December, all right? So these are the times that you work on the trees. But before you do all that, here's what you can do first. In the previous little clip that I just did, I didn't talk about each one of those things that we do is very seasonal specific. So you would only repot during a certain season. Especially here in Sacramento where we live, it's 110, 116 we hit 2 years ago in August. So it wouldn't be a good time to repot. So anyway, everything that I just told you in that last clip was seasonal specific. What I'm going to tell you now is not. You can do it almost any time of year as long as you're not in extremes. If you're in an extreme area, then I'd probably wait until we are at least over 40, 45 degrees before you do this next process, okay? Everything I'm telling you is based on Sacramento, California here in the United States. And so you may have to adjust a month, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on where you live in the United States. Okay, I'm also just thinking that your tree is already healthy, it's already growing really well, and doesn't have any diseases, okay? If it does, you may want to wait until the tree's a little bit stronger. You may need to fertilize, do a few things before you worry about doing what I'm about ready to show you. Okay, well, let's go grab a few trees to work on. I like to use trees in the garden for examples that you can find at your local nursery. It's almost a little bit unrealistic to show you a finished or even a tree that's been worked on for 15 or 20 years. So I like to use something that you can find. This was brought into the garden. It was 7 feet tall 2 years ago, and we cut it back to nothing. And so this is a great tree to use as an example. Okay. Even though today my goal was not to talk about cutting anything off, there's some things that you can do that's not going to hurt your tree. So here's a good example. Again, we're pulling this down, and this is a branch, a candle, a bud on the bottom of the branch. Okay, so it's wasted energy. And then I can go back here and As you can see, a lot of these have already been done. The bottom's clean. And that's another wonderful thing that we're trying to find is clean bottoms. So here's the original one that I was working on. And if it's on the bottom, as you can see here, then we can cut that off. Okay. And these are on the bottoms of these small branches. Now, on this one, they're a little bit small, so I'm actually going to leave those. Let's let the branch get a little bit bigger before we take that off. That's going to be more energy to make this a little bit larger. Let's check this one out. Okay, so here we can actually just cut this bottom off. We're going to go into 3 buds. And then if there's anything on the bottom, again, a lot of these have been done by the students, so I'm going to grab another tree. I'm going to finish this one up a little bit, and then I'm going to grab another tree. You know, since I had this in here, I went ahead and decided just to take off the 3rd year needles. And this is a great example of 3rd year needles. You'll see them on your tree. They'll turn almost completely brown, and they're just super easy to get off, take them off, get them out of the way. It immediately adds more light to the interior, makes the tree healthier and stronger just by taking these off. Okay, let me grab another tree for you. Okay, so here I am holding underneath. Here's our needles that we need to take off. It's wasted energy, right? But what I want you to look at is when you're looking at the tree, I'm going to zoom down into here. You see that bud? That bud is actually a candle, and that candle actually is what made this branch. Okay, so anyway, we're going to go back to the bottom of this, and anything that's on the bottom is wasted energy. So I'm going to pull that off all the way out. And when I'm done, it should look like a half mohawk. Okay, here's another good candidate, right? Looking into the face here. Got our bent tweezers, holding here, right? If it's on the bottom, I'm going to grab the fascicle. Do you see the fascicle? Fascicle is a little sheath that holds the 2 needles together. So I grab the fascicle and then remove along every branch. Now, if I was doing this on a little bit more of a finished tree, this is only for a demo. If I was doing this on a more finished tree, I would start on top, since everything falls down, and work my way down. Even if it's bottom side, if I can go on the bottom and reach it with a tweezers, I take it off. Wasted energy. So one of the things that removing all the needles from the bottom of the branches allows your tree to do is it allows it to get more light, okay, more light and air to the interior of the tree. More light stimulates new growth and hopefully backbudding on your tree. The wonderful thing about what you've achieved, what you've just done by taking these off, is watching. The wonderful thing is watching how fast your tree is going to respond now with the extra energy that it has since you've removed all this wasted energy from the bottoms of the branches. Okay, so the power of this needle is amazing. I mean, it really is. From just by taking off the bottom, right? That power, all again, I was saying before, the starches and sugars and everything that's running out to feed this needle is now going to be distributed through the entire tree, which makes your tree stronger. You allow light, you allow air, and this extra energy is now going to get to the interior, where a lot of times the interior is the weakest part of the tree. So that's wonderful that you're just strengthening the interior of your tree. Of course, you strengthen the entire tree at the same time. I believe, as bonsai enthusiasts, the faster we learn when, how, why, where, what, how often, right, to pull needles or control needles throughout this entire tree, the faster we learn about this beautiful tree. And it really is, of all the trees, it is the most amazing because of how fast it just does everything for you. It's not the fastest growing. The fastest growing tree in our garden is a wisteria or even a maple, okay? But it still is wonderful at how fast it will respond back. Honestly, I believe I could talk for hours on needles and buds. You know, the faster you learn what a bud does on your tree, what type of bud it is. Is it a needle bud? Is it a adventitious bud? Is it a latent bud? Why are these needles in this area stronger? Why are these weaker? The faster you learn that, the faster you will learn how wonderful this black pine tree really is. And, you know, that's always part of our journey. One of the last things I want to say is the amount of needles as your tree becomes more finished, and we're just in the early stages, the amount of needles that you leave in a certain area strengthens and weakens that tree, okay? So the Japanese black pine is usually the strongest on the top of the tree. So as your tree grows, you need to learn how to weaken the strong and strengthen the weak on that tree. We hope you enjoyed today's discussion, okay? It's a series of educational things that we'll be doing over time. And lastly, please get in your garden and get your Zen on, right? All right, take care. Thank you in advance for all your likes, your shares, your comments, and we appreciate all the new subscriptions that we received recently. Looking forward to helping you on your journey. Have a good one.